Thank you very much. To ask the Scottish Government what action it is taking to restore ferry services between Mallaig, Oban and Lochboisdale in South Uist, in light of the announcement that the services are to be withdrawn from the 5th of April to the 13th of May.
Minister Kevin Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Transport Scotland met with CalMac earlier today, and they confirmed they are doing everything possible to bring vessels back into service and minimise the period that the Lochboisdale-Oban-Mallaig route is out of service. CalMac have also put in place mitigation by increasing services on the Barra to Eriskay route to allow greater use of the services from Barra. We recognise the real challenges being faced and regret the disruption that this is causing to island communities and, of course, island businesses. It is, however, important to note that islands remain open for business, and CalMac are highlighting where there is capacity on secondary routes. As members are aware, we have provided funding for the charter of the MV Alfred that will enable additional resilience in the fleet when she comes into service next month.
Graham Simpson.
Can I thank the Minister for his answer, and can I start by welcoming him to his new post? He's only minutes into the role, but he's not off to a good start. His answer will be of no comfort to islanders who will be without a ferry service to the mainland for 5 weeks. And, Presiding Officer, it's hard for those of us who live on the mainland to understand the impact of that, because most of us have choices of how we get about, no matter how bad public transport is. Now, CalMac Chief Executive Robbie Drummond calls it a challenging period, which could go on for 2 years. It's worse than challenging, it's disastrous. So with the holiday period looming, what will the Minister be doing on his break to sort this out?
Minister.
Well, I thank Mr Simpson for welcoming me to this new post. And Mr Simpson and I have been opposing in various roles in this Parliament previously. And as Mr Simpson well knows, I will always do my level best. And what will I be doing over the next wee while? Well, today I met with Transport Scotland directors to discuss some of the most important issues facing transport in Scotland. This afternoon, I will be speaking with CalMac about this and other issues. I recognise how important these ferry services are for our island communities. They are lifelines. As chair of Nestrans in a previous life, I served on the Northern Isles Lifeline Ferry Service Committee. So I recognise the impacts that these kind of things have on our island communities. And I will be doing all that I can to ensure that CalMac get it right for all of our island communities, and the Chamber can be assured that I will continue to update everyone on how we are going about that.
Graham Simpson.
Well, I'm not sure any of that will be a comfort to islanders, but to be fair to the Minister, he has inherited a disaster. Now, islands, and particularly businesses, islanders and businesses on the Uist need help. So has the Government done any analysis of the impact on the local community and the economy of this? And can the Minister commit to looking at a compensation scheme for islanders and reduced fares on those ferries that they can actually use while this crisis goes on?
Minister.
Presiding Officer, as I said in my earlier answer, my first course of action is to speak to CalMac this afternoon and to hear what mitigations can be put in place. And while the announcement by CalMac of this change has come as a shock to many, including the Government, we have to ensure that communication is right between CalMac and our island communities too. I will be speaking to CalMac this afternoon. We will be seeking mitigations. I will be seeking solutions so that our island communities can get back to the normality that they should have in these regards. And of course, as always, Presiding Officer, in all of this, I will continue to update Parliament on our efforts to achieve that for our island communities.
Alistair Allen.
I welcome the Minister to his new post. I have today been inundated with messages of despair from South Uist. This is a community that has suffered by far, the highest rate of cancellations of any island community over a period of months. And for this to happen yet again, just as the Easter holidays are starting, is a devastating blow. Given what I have to frankly call the abysmal state at present of CalMac's service to this particular community, can the Scottish Government consider either a business resilience fund or other specific measures for Uist?
Minister.
Presiding Officer, I fully sympathise the impact that this is having on South Uist. I recognise that Dr Allen has been vociferous in all of this. The impact on his constituents will no doubt be challenging for some, and the timing of this withdrawal is not the best either, given the Easter period. Scottish ministers need assurance from CalMac that this measure has been taken with full consideration to capacity and volumes on alternative routes. It is, however, important to note that CalMac have increased operations on the service from Eriskay to Barra, and there are other routes to enable people to reach South Uist, so that people know the island remains open for business, although car deck capacity may be pressured. As I said earlier, I will be meeting with CalMac later this afternoon, and I will impress upon them the need to minimise any outage to this service. On the point of the compensation scheme, I know that this is something that has been discussed by the Lochboisdale Business Group with ministers and officials, and I will need to consider this further, although our primary focus has to be on restoring these services to minimise impact on business in the first place. And as always, I am more than willing to discuss these matters with Dr Allen further as the constituency MSP.
Rhoda Grant.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I also welcome the Minister to his new post. It's absolutely unacceptable that there will be no ferries from Lochboisdale for 6 weeks. Uist has already borne the brunt of recent disruptions. The mitigation put in place means that the small isles will also be left with only one ferry a week, again absolutely unacceptable. Disruption is now so common that the Scottish Government have devised a disruption management traffic prioritisation framework. The framework can cancel bookings and relegates hauliers to the end of the queue, making their businesses and those depending on them absolutely unviable. Can I ask if he will procure a freight ferry to bring into service for those periods? What assistance and compensation will he make to all of those impacted? Or is he just another in a long line of failed transport ministers?
Minister.
Well, it must be a record in terms of already a member basically saying that a transport minister has failed, considering that I have not been in post for 12 hours even, or 10 minutes in reality. What I would say to Ms Grant, quite simply, is this. She is confused in some of her lines of questioning because the mitigation committee that she talks of has got nothing to do with the Scottish Government and is CalMac. I intend to have discussions this afternoon with CalMac around about the measures that need to be put in place here. I will talk to them about the issues that are affecting islanders, and I will do everything that I can to ensure that CalMac does the job that they need to do. And in terms of future procurement of ferries, as I said, we have already brought in the MV Alfred, but I will be looking at all of this in some depth, as I know that my predecessor Jenny Gilruth did, to find solutions that work for our island communities and ensures that we have a ferry service that works for all.
Edward Mountain.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I hope I'm going to be some help to the Minister. In 2018, the Scottish Government set up a resilience fund of £3.5 million to hold fast-moving spares for ferries that broke down so they didn't have to be manufactured. The problem was that the Transport Minister at the time, Graham repurposed it for something else. The following year, Michael Matheson, who was the Transport Minister at the time, repurposed it for another reason, but said that it was being reinstated. So, can the Minister confirm that that money has been spent on holding spares? Those spares are in stock and available to use for the ferries. And if he doesn't know the answers, I suggest it might be where he starts with CalMac this afternoon.
Minister.
Well, I'm sure that will be part of many discussions with CalMac this afternoon. But as my predecessor has said, there is that resilience fund that they hold. I will be questioning about them about that this afternoon. And I have to say that I will be questioning them around about the current unavailable ferries, which are MV Caledonian Isles, Clansman and Hebridean Isles, to make sure that we can get these ferries back into service as soon as possible.
Jamie Halcrow-Johnston.
Thank you. I heard that the Minister say that he was meeting with CalMac and that he was meeting with Transport Scotland. When's he meeting with the communities impacted by this? Because they're sick and tired of hearing new transport ministers making promises that are never, ever delivered.
Minister.
Oh, what I would say to the member is, I think it's 12 minutes now since my appointment. I've already met with Transport Scotland this morning. I will be meeting with CalMac this afternoon. Of course, I will be meeting with communities the length and breadth of Scotland about the transport issues that they face. I think that many members will recognise that in all of the ministerial roles that I have had, I've gone out of my way to listen to the voices of lived experience. Because that is extremely important to me in ensuring that our policy decisions are the right one. This job is no different, and I will speak to our island communities as well as everybody else that our transport system impacts upon.